So yeah, my eldest is 5. Dulcie is 3.5. I'm still feeding, and yeah, and then this one's due at the beginning of March. So my first was actually, she's an IVF baby. So I think I was just really wanted to prove that my body could do something at least, you know what I mean? So the subsequent 2 have been absolute shock, well, surprise, lovely, not shocks, lovely surprises. It was incredibly hard, and I still have scars on my nipples now to show for it. And I think partly it was down to, I just expected that was the way it was going to be. So I kind of had it in my head that, well, it has to work because that's how I wanted to. And I think also having had Tabby through IVF, I think I was determined to sort of prove to my body that I could do it. And I think with Tabby, I definitely came out of the pregnancy still feeling quite sad about my body not doing what it was meant to do. So I was really determined that I wanted to breastfeed. And when it was really hard, really painful and really intense, I found that really, really tough. I had the local team have people that will come to you. They had a look for tongue tie. They didn't spot it. I don't think the lady that came to our house was lovely, but I think she was quite new to the job. So she kind of looked and said, oh, it could be, but every time I had the thing where everyone was like, well, they look fine. I knew that Tabby it wasn't a very efficient feed. She wasn't putting on weight very well. But everyone just sort of looked and sort of said, oh, well, the positioning looks fine. But it was like, so yeah. When Dulcie, it was really different. I mean, I do still think she has quite a shallow latch compared to how, but I mean, she fed like an absolute dream straight away. So I don't think we realised we were pregnant for a good sort of 9 weeks before I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, something's not right. And actually, one of the things that made me think, was that Tabby didn't like the taste of my milk anymore. And I'd feed her and then she'd just look at me and go, and I thought, oh, that's strange. Like, as if she was like, why are you trying to poison me? I grew up with family, and I've grown up seeing breastfeeding everywhere. My cousins, I remember, I'm pretty sure I remember being breastfed. My mum says I breastfed till quite late, till about 2.5. And I swear I have a memory of breastfeeding, which sounds ridiculous, but I just had this sort of image. So I think I just kind of went into it assuming that I'd be fine because everyone else I knew were absolutely fine with it. And it was never really spoken about times when it could be quite difficult or intense or, you know, anything like that. My sister had her 3, and my younger sister actually had hers, her first, before I had mine. My cousins, I've got loads of cousins, and they all very happily and openly breastfed at parties and things. And that was, and family friends who had kids. So it was never something that seemed unusual to me. So I think moving to Coventry, because I'm not from Coventry originally, I think moving to Coventry and seeing that there was this sort of this real push. It's a great place for support. There's lots of support here, which is really good, and I feel really lucky that I had that perspective. And I think that's why I was so determined to do it. My mum wasn't fed. My mum was bottle fed, but I think she was quite determined when we were born that she wanted to breastfeed. Even when she was pregnant with my sister, I was still feeding from her. I think she said I was feeding till about 2.5, 3-ish. And funnily enough, she's never really spoken to me about it. It was just, I just knew that's, and I guess I've got a younger sister as well, so I must have memories of her being fed as well. So yeah, any sort of family friends that had small babies all breastfed, and it was just all quite, that's just what I just saw. I didn't often see yeah, didn't often see bottles at all. I mean, I spent £200 on my mobile in the first month of Tabby being born. That was just phoning my family, my sisters and my mum for support. And that was really, I mean, I was a bit shocked when I realised my phone bill, but looking back, it was £200 well spent. I phoned the National Breastfeeding Helpline as well in the early days. And then obviously in Coventry, we've got a breastfeeding support, well, a feeding support group who you can go to meetings. So I actually went to one of the meetings with a friend. When Dulcie got to a certain age, in a way, lockdown was quite nice because I got to a point where I was quite nervous to feed in public with Dulcie because she's so big. And I've only ever had negative comments once, and that was with Tabby when she was actually quite little still. And it was 2 young girls in McDonald's. So it was easy to kind of brush off, but I think it does kind of, you do feel very vulnerable in public when it's something that's not seen very often. I went to breastfeeding group in Coventry, and there are plenty of women that do, and it's great. And all the baby groups are great, but I think out and about in town, I felt a bit, when she was tiny, it was fine. It's just as she started to get bigger and wanting it, I think I started to feel much more self-conscious. But I have to say, it has been quite nice in lockdown because you don't see anyone, so you can just do whatever you want. Because Dulcie goes to nursery 2.5 times a week. Last lockdown, Tabby wasn't in school yet, so that was nice, and the weather was nice, and we were able to get out and about, and it didn't feel too different. This time around definitely feels different. So I just have Tabby for I get Tabby on her own for a couple of days while she's not at school, which is nice. That's been quite nice actually, to have a little bit of a change around, because normally it's just me and Dulcie when Tabby's at school. So but I can definitely tell that lockdown is affecting them. We went to the park the other day and we bumped into one of her school friends, and not a school friend she would particularly play with. I've never heard her really talk about him that much, but she was so excited to see him. I think it's very easy as well when you're a new mum to, a bit like in birth actually, it's very easy to assume that you don't know what you're doing, and therefore you just revert to what everyone else tells you, when actually everyone else's advice might have worked for them, but isn't necessarily what's best for you.